7 reasons I chose the books over the streets. I was sitting out thinking about how fortunate I am to, grow up in a single parent home and to be able to, live in an area where I don't have to deal with a lot of crime and the things I have to used to deal with back in the hood. And I want to make this video, especially for those that didn't grow up in that type of environment and those that's in that environment that may be younger and you're trying to get yourself off the streets. So in this video, I'm going to share 7 reasons, and I have a lot more, on why I chose the books over the streets. What's up, it's Gene, this word to be great, and I'm here to help you to go from feeling worthless to worthy. 1 is 99 days for the runner and 1 for the master. Now, I know you're probably thinking, what does that mean? And that's what I felt when my friend Daddy told us that. See, I had a homeboy. I used to do a lot of stuff on the streets with him. We used to go out and steal a lot, breaking in cars, taking hubcaps, you name it. And he just so happened to be the guy that also used to cut my hair. So one day I went over to get my hair cut, and he had just finished cutting my hair, and his daddy came into we was like in a garage area, and he said, "Boys, I want you to know there's 99 days for the runner and 1 for the master." And I say, "Sir, what does that mean?" He said, "I know what y'all doing out there on them streets. It's not just y'all. I see fools out there. They stealing. Some of them out there killing. They drug dealing. There's 99 days you could go out and do all those crimes. But it takes 1 day for the police to catch you, and you could be dealing with the consequences for the rest of your life." You see, when he told me that, even though I knew what he was saying was right, I was so young, I just really couldn't put the two together. And but that changed when we had another homeboy. He was a big drug dealer. Everybody looked up to this guy, but he also didn't play about his money. So he had a reputation of shooting people, and everybody knew not to mess with this guy, right? And what eventually happened is he wound up shooting so many people and selling so many drugs that eventually he got caught. And he ended up getting a life sentence in prison. And that made me realize my friend Daddy knew what he was talking about. That it was 99 days for the runner and 1 for the master. So that's the first reason that I decided to choose the books over the streets. If you like this video, I want to ask you to like and share this video. Also, hit that bell so anytime I post a new video, you are notified. 2, there's no loyalty on the streets. It's amazing how your homeboys will tell you how much they love you. They got your back. Nobody's going to snitch on each other. And you hear this stuff and you believe it because y'all all grew up in this area and you feel like family. Well, that all changed in my mind one day because I'm not going to put people's names out there. We're going to say one name is Mark. The other name is John. Mark and John and me, we decided to go out in the daytime, which was stupid, to try to steal some hubcaps off of cars. Now, back in the 90s, they had these hubcaps that were called disc, and they were very popular. Now, the thing about those discs, they were also easy to take off the car. All you had to do is get a screwdriver, and you could just pop that disc off, and then you could go sell them in the hood for a lot of money. So one afternoon, Mark was like, "Hey, let's go to this apartment complex. I seen this guy. He has this lack, and he has some disc on it. We could just ride up, steal a disc, and then burn out." So we get to this apartment complex, and I'm sitting in the back seat with John, and we're plotting on how we're going to get the disc off this car. And then John say, "Listen, I can go do it by myself. Y'all just park a little bit down the street. I'll pop the disc off, and then I'll run to the car, and we can burn out." Well, John got out the car. He's kneeling down, right? He don't want nobody to see him in his apartment complex. He gets over to the car, and when he kneels down with the screwdriver and he's sitting on the ground trying to pop one of the disc off, this big old swole dude just came out of nowhere with his shirt off, and he started yelling at him. Now, Mark, who was driving the car, decided to burn off and leave John. And I was shocked. I was like, man, what you doing? You just gonna leave him like that? He said, man, that fool's stupid, man. That's on him. Hey, he need to get away. You know what I'm saying? He need to come down the street and catch up with us. So we drive like way down the street and we stop. And all we hear is some gunshots. I'm like, man, I don't know if John got killed. I don't know what's going on. And I'm mad at Mark because he left him. But then I look out the back window and I see John running full speed. He running. I open up the back door. He get in and we drive off. John was so mad at Mark. He said, fool, you just left me, man. That fool could have killed me. Why you just burned out? He said, hey, man, you know, I told you to go out there and get the hubcaps, but I didn't tell you I was going to go to jail and get shot with you. You see, at that moment, I realized on the streets, there was no loyalty. All these guys will tell you that they got your back, but when something happens, they quick to burn out. They quick to snitch. They quick to leave you by yourself. So after I seen that, it changed my whole perspective on the hood. And that was the second reason I chose the books over the streets. 3, you have very untrustworthy homeboys. You know, at one point, my mama, our back door was messed up. And I had several homeboys that knew we couldn't lock our back door. So when they would come over sometimes they would come through the back door and it was a secret. And I trusted them because they were supposed to be my friends. Well, we had a church trip that we had to go to. And I told my homeboys that we'd be going about a week. But right before we left, my mama went to the store and we was on food stamps. She had bought a whole bunch of groceries and put them in the house. Now, we go on our church trip, and when we get back a week later, we come into the house, and everything looks kind of weird. And my mama goes to the kitchen, open up the refrigerator, and all the food that she bought was gone. Not only that, I went into my room, and I noticed that my video games, my Sega games, a lot of them was missing, my controllers. And the only thing I thought to myself was, it had to be my homeboys. They the only ones knew that we had a back door that would not lock. So I went to some of them and I asked them, I said, hey man, which one of y'all stole our food? Who got my video games? And all of them say, man, we don't know what you're talking about. It could have been a crackhead. It could have been anybody. We don't know who did it. But I found out months later that the very homeboys that I asked were the ones who had actually went inside our house. And you know, that made me realize that on the streets, you have a bunch of untrustworthy homeboys. And that was another reason I decided to choose the books over the streets. 4, the hood illusion. In my book, Word to Be Great, I talk about this hood illusion because it had such a profound effect on my mentality. You see, when you're growing up on the streets and you got your street signs, everybody throw up they street signs with their hands. That's what I'm talking about. And you claiming your clique. And in Houston, we had the south side. We didn't like the north side. Then we had other neighborhoods on the south side that we didn't get along with. And everybody was trying to dominate each other. And so it gave you this sense of ownership. You was fighting for something. You was even about to die for something. You had to claim your hood and protect your hood reputation no matter what. And I bought into that stuff. You know, I was down my hood. You know, I grew up on Northdale, Overbrook. So we'd be Northdale, Overbrook. We always would say these things. Now, over in the south side where I was at, you had Sunnyside, you had Herschelwood, you had all these different neighborhoods. And the thing is, there was an iconic sign that kind of represented all of us. It was called South Park. That was the South Park sign. So one day I was on a bus. It was like my junior, senior year in high school. We was going home on the school bus. And the crazy thing is when we got close to the South Park sign, I saw a bunch of police officers. There was some bulldozers, and there was a lot of people in the community outside. So we didn't know what happened. We didn't know if it was a shooting, it was a robbing, somebody was getting arrested. But as we got closer to the South Park sign, we all figured it out. You see, the city decided that they want to get rid of the South Park sign because I guess they felt it was kind of gang related or whatever. So they sent these bulldozers out there and a bunch of police officers because they were tearing down the South Park sign and were placing it with a Belfort sign. Now, of course, this enraged everybody in the community. People on the bus was yelling and screaming and cursing outside the bus, talking about don't take the South Park sign down. But as I was watching this commotion, it made me realize something. We have people going to jail. We have people dying. We're throwing up our hood signs. We're doing all this stuff about a section of Houston that we don't even own. You see, I realized that moment we had fell for this hood illusion. It was fake ownership. We didn't own anything. We couldn't even stop the city from changing the South Park sign. So then I realized that I was putting my life on the line. I was putting my freedom on the line for something I did not even own, and everybody else was doing the same thing. And once I realized I was stuck in this hood illusion, I decided to give all that up. And that was the fourth reason I chose the books over the streets. 5, progress haters. When I told my homeboys that I was tired of doing all the stuff on the streets, stealing and all this other stuff, and I told them I was going to get a regular job, a lot of them thought it was funny. They was like, this dude selling knot. And then one of my homeboys was like, hey, where you getting a job at? I said, I'm actually going to get a job at Super Kmart. Now, this Super Kmart was in an area called Pearland at the time. And it's this very nice area that was kind of like a suburb. It was like 35 minutes to 40 minutes from where I live. Now, I had a friend that, you know, he kind of grew up with money and he didn't stay too far from me, and he had a car. So I would ride to work with him on every day and I just pay him gas money. Now, I was a sacker at this Super Kmart. I was enjoying the fact that I was making progress in my life. I wasn't stealing. I had a job and I was making money the honest way. But it was something about that really, really bothered my two homeboys that I used to do all the stealing with. So then they decided to have this great idea. And one day when I was at work, I was, up there sacking groceries, and I looked up and I see my two homeboys that I normally would steal with, which is Mark and John. They come into the store and they laugh and, look at this fool with them tight pants on. Look, he got that uniform on, and stuff like that. And I stopped for a minute. I'm having a conversation with them. And then I tell them, I said, look, man, I got to get back to work. You know what I'm saying? I can't just be here talking to y'all. They was like, all right, cool, man. All right, you sell out, whatever. And so they left. So I went back to doing my job. I was sacking groceries. And about 20 minutes later, I had a lunch break. And right when I was going on my lunch break, my manager, I think his name was Mr. Golf or something like that, he came up to me and said, hey, Gene, can you come with me? I said, yeah, what's up? He said, you know those two guys personally that we just saw on the camera talking to you? I said, yeah, that's my homeboys. I grew up with them. He said, are you in on the stuff that they just did? I said, what you talking about? He said, well, your two homeboys, we got one of them in the back right now. We caught, loss prevention, got him. The other one ran out the store. They were in the store stealing. And I thought to myself, these fools came up to my job 40 minutes away from our hood, talk to me while I'm doing my job, and then go in there and start stealing. And I thought to myself, they had all these other places they could have went to. They're going to come to my job and do this. And I noticed and I realized that these guys did it because they were progress haters. They didn't like the fact I was making progress. I was doing something positive. So they was trying to sabotage it. It just so happened that my manager believed me. He did not fire me, but I made sure that I did not deal with Mark and John again, because I knew at that moment they did not have my best interest in mind, and they was trying to destroy my progress. So the fifth reason I chose the books over the streets is because of progress haters. Are you struggling with that voice that tells you that you're not good enough? You know, that voice that keeps you down on yourself? As a man that grew up in a single parent home in the hood, I know that voice far too well. And it took me many years to overcome that voice and the strategies and tools that I use that helped me go from feeling worthless to worthy, or in my premium ebook, Worthy to be Great. So if you're ready to start silencing that negative voice and start believing that you're good enough, click the link below or scan the QR code and get Worthy to be Great today. 6. Guys on the streets have no respect for you or your dream. When I was playing college basketball, it was like my freshman year. I had came home for the Christmas break. And so I looked down the street and I saw some of my homeboys. They was down there playing basketball. Now, everybody know I was playing college basketball. You know, I was living my dream. So I said, you know what? I'm a humble guy. I'm going to go down there and shoot basketball with my homeboys because I don't want them to think that I feel I'm better than them. So I go down there and they was like, what's up? They called me Junior. What's up, Junior? How everything going? I said, good. I'm enjoying school. I'm enjoying college basketball. So we play about 5 or 6 games. You know what I'm saying? We have a good time. Now, you would think that guys know that you're in college, you're doing well. They will not want to do things that will jeopardize for you. But I was absolutely wrong. So after we finished playing our last basketball game, I noticed my homeboy, Mark, he started walking down the street. And this car was sitting in front of the house that belonged to this really, really crazy drug dealer who had parked it there because he went in the house to talk to my friend, let's say Trey, cousin, who he was dating. So the car is running. We all know who car it is. We are like 10 feet away from this car. The music is blasting. Mark is running down the street. He gets by the car. He opens the door. He jumps in and he drives off. Now I'm sitting there thinking like, man, this fool just stole this man's car. And we are right out here in front of the house playing basketball. That dope dealer gonna know we just had his car stolen. So old boy come out the house, you know what I'm saying? Now this dude crazy, dog. He looks at us. He said, oh, y'all know what time it is. I'ma kill you, and you. He pointed at me. I said, man, I ain't had nothing to do with that. You had something. You was out here. You had something to do with it too. When I get my gun, I'ma kill all of y'all. Y'all know what time it is. Y'all had my car stolen. So, man, let me tell y'all something. I was terrified because I knew this dude was crazy. I had heard stories about this dude beating a guy, half to death with a baseball bat. So I was like, man, I got to get out of here, man. But I knew that in about a week, I was going back to college, and there was no way he was going to see me. Well, about 2 days after that happened, old boy got his car back. My homeboy Trey, he drives up in his car. And I look, and that dope dealer is right behind him. I said, hey, dog, old boy is behind you, man. He already threatened to kill us. He said, I ain't worried about that fool. So he drives off. And when he drives off, I run into the house. You know what I'm saying? And Trey goes home. The drug dealer's behind him. Trey get out the car with a gun, and they are literally shooting at each other. Pop, 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 pop. I'm like, man, these fools are crazy, dog. And so Trey ended up going to jail. The dope dealer, I don't know if he went to jail. I don't know what happened. But I would tell y'all this. When I went back to college, I was so grateful to God. I was so happy. And I knew I made a great decision to choose the books over the streets. And at that point, when I went home, I didn't hang out with no homeboys. I didn't do any of that. But that was another reason that I chose the books over the streets, because I realized that the guys in the streets had no respect for me or my dreams. And number 7, the hood does not acknowledge or appreciate those who chose a positive path. One of the craziest things, and some of y'all can relate to what I'm about to say, is that, there's a lot of backwards thinking in the hood, right? You would think that people that chose a positive path, they would be acknowledged and congratulated for that, right? But that's not how the hood works. When I used to come home for the summer from college, I would see my homeboys. They would just ignore me half the time. They didn't really, acknowledge anything that I was doing. And you know, when you're that young, it gets to you because you're still looking for approval. And I was still, I was only like 20, 21, 20, 19, 20 years old. So I was still struggling my self-esteem, my self-worth. But this is something that I noticed every summer. There was always somebody who came home from prison. And when they did that, the hood would acknowledge them. They would give them a barbecue. They would congratulate them for coming home. And I used to think that is backwards. Now, I don't judge those guys for making mistakes in life. They got them locked up. But it also made you think to yourself like, wow, I'm doing all this positive stuff. I'm trying to do something that is, you would think what people would admire. But you realize that the thinking is so backwards that they admire the ex-con over the book nerd. But I knew I made a good decision because I said to myself, if I have to go to prison to get approval, to be acknowledged, to get a barbecue, I'd rather read them books. But that was the seventh reason that I chose the books, or I kept choosing the books over the streets. Because I realized that the hood did not acknowledge or congratulate positive progress. Now, I know it's some of you all out there that's you probably growing up on the streets and you trying to be gangster. You trying to do all this stuff that you hear about. But I want you to think about these 7 things I talked about because I'm sure you're seeing them yourself in your life. And for you all that didn't grow up like that, maybe you're a teacher, maybe you're a mentor, a coach, or maybe you got, kids or something, they trying to be gangster or whatever. This video will give you a little bit of insight on what guys go through or how they think when they're on the streets. And you can see why, a lot of them don't really choose the books because choosing the books is not something that people in the streets are going to just, celebrate. They're not going to admire. You would be more admired if you was gangster, you was stealing, you was killing, you was, doing some crazy stuff, because then people see you more having street cred opposed to somebody that grew up in that same environment that decided to hit the books. But despite that, I want to tell whoever it is, if you out there on the streets, to choose the books over the streets. And if you want a guide that can help you, that can give you some steps you can take to work on yourself, to build your self-worth and your self-confidence, my book, Worthy to Be Great, is the perfect tool for you. Because in this book, I use a lot of stories from the streets. You can see my mindset. You can see how I was able to transform from a guy on the streets with low self-worth and low self-esteem and became a guy who's now a professional speaker, a 9-time author who hit those books and start to write books. So if you want to put yourself on a path so you could be more than the streets are telling you can be, click the link below or hit that QR code and get my premium ebook, Worthy to Be Great. This is the end of this video, and I enjoyed making this. I thought it was something to do to, give a little insight. But I want to tell all you guys, you are worthy of your dreams. So work hard to make whatever that vision is in your mind and your heart to become a reality, because you are worthy to be great.